Welcome back. So as I said, we're joined by the immediate past president of the JCC, Afra Raymond. He's discussing the procurement process for land projects, in this country, and it comes with the heels of a newspaper report that the $1 billion Invaders Bay project is put on hold, and also concern raised about developmental projects in Chaguaramas. So, immediate past president, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kejan.
So you were talking during the break. You have read this?
Yes, I did read yesterday's article. Yeah.
And I'm guessing you're not on his side. You've no love lost.
Well, it's not. It's nothing as personal or as direct as that. I mean, development is an inevitable part of civilization, physical development, buildings and new projects and so on. The real question that I had been lobbying before when I was president of JCC, and I continue to lobby for now, is the question of proper process in large-scale development. Okay, and if you're doing a large-scale development like the one that was contemplated at Invaders Bay, or some of the other ones throughout the country that are controversial, those need to be conducted in a proper process. And the first stage in that process, Kejan and the listeners and the viewers this morning, the first stage in that process is consultation, so that people can know
what's coming,
what you are doing, what you are thinking about doing, what are the concepts you are considering, and you, as the state, could receive the benefit of the collective wisdom of the society, what is better here and what is not better, and so on. We've had examples of that sort of thing, So
do you believe that this stalling of the project is a result of that, a result of all that collaboration of you making noise about it?
Well, I think that the Invaders Bay project stalled because of the protests raised by the JCC and by other organizations. At that point we were joined by the Chamber of Commerce, the Manufacturers Association, the Transparency Institute were part of the struggles, and ultimately the JCC litigated because we had the belief that what was being proposed by the Ministry of Planning at the time was illegal, because it was a breach of the Central Tenders Board Act, which is still the law in this country. The ministry issued a request for proposals in breach of that act, and furthermore we took it to court because Dr. Tiwari claimed that he had legal advice that said what he was doing was proper. We took it to court and we won the case on the 15th of July of 2014. We won the case and the court awarded us and ordered the government to publish the papers. Tiwari immediately appealed. That was the Ministry of Planning, immediately appealed. And that appeal is now completed. The arguments have been completed, and interestingly enough, the judgment is awaited. So it's what we call the judgment is reserved.
Right.
And the appeal court is expected to deliver its judgment in the Invaders Bay matter in October, which is next month. So I think we'd have a very interesting event happening in terms of what that ruling is. So the legal protests and the other protests certainly had an effect, in my opinion, in slowing down where that project was conceived as having reached by now. It certainly got stalled because of those protests.
And when October comes, how is the state, the government has changed? What do you expect to happen? Do you expect this government to make a
it's difficult to tell. It's difficult to tell. The result could either be that the state is ordered to publish the information, which will be what I expect, because it was a good case fought by us, JCC, at the time. Or the state could win the case, and it really would be a political matter for the current people in power to speak to. I mean, from what Mr. Chin is saying here and from what he said in previous interviews, what is happening is that it appears that the proposals that have been approved by the People's Partnership government, it appears that those proposals have actually been shelved.
Right.
It doesn't appear that they're going ahead, and there's a great amount of frustration, which is what comes across in that interview. But there was never any intention.
The country's losing out.
Sure, there was never any intention, just to make it clear once again for the 99th time, there was never any intention to stop Derek Chin. Okay,
it was a process.
Or to stop Jerry Joseph with the Invaders Bay Marina project. There was never any intention to stop this person or that person. It's a question that large-scale national development must take place in accordance with a proper process. We live in a republic. We live in a democracy. We live in a nation ruled by laws. We need to have that solid. The state needs to be exemplary in its conduct.
So when you look at this, and then you also look at the issue that's happening in Chaguaramas with lands leased out, as he mentioned here.
Yes.
Should there be a protest about that as well?
Well, the Chaguaramas situation is one that I don't want to say too much about it, and part of the reason for that is because of some of my professional commitments. I don't want to get into a long discussion on Chaguaramas, but certainly the allocations. Do you have
interest in Chaguaramas?
No. The interest is that my firm gives advice to the CDA, and if I give advice, I'm not going to sit here and say it's like expecting Mr. Prescott who gave the legal opinion in CDA to come on TV and give an interview about it, he wouldn't do it.
Right.
No professional person would do it. But I can say that any situation where land is being allocated, which is a state asset, or large-scale projects are being proposed and advanced, there should be consultation and it should be a proper process. So I'll say that is my standard approach as what I regard as acceptable across the country. Yeah.
All right. I would love to push you more on this, especially now that I know that you have more information on the CDA, but I respect your professional commitments.
You can't get into that, no.
Let's talk about what the Prime Minister would have said in his address to the nation a few weeks ago, where he said, we're finally looking to enact the procurement legislation and start using it. Do you believe him?
Well, there are certain things, again, it's not a question of belief or disbelief. I know that certainly when Dr. Rowley had his political crisis back in 07 and 08 and 09, when he was part of the Manning government, and he ended up being dismissed from cabinet, and he had been attacked for some years before. It was around some of the very same issues. So certainly in terms of his credentials as an individual politician at the level of national leadership, his credentials are sound in terms of speaking to the issue, and we really have to get beyond the personality and get to the particularities. In other words, when are the regulations going to be put in place? When is the board? There's supposed to be a board appointed to run the procurement regulator. When is that office of procurement regulation? When is that board going to be put in place? And we really need to look for a timetable now beyond. This is important and we're going to do it. We need to look beyond that to some kind of a timetable for actual actions to implement the act takes place, and that's really important. I'm glad you raised the point.
That one line that he gave in his speech was not enough.
Yeah, there wasn't enough detail for me to really give any kind of satisfactory. What I would need to see is some kind of a commitment to a timetable to advance the process, because there are detailed things that need to happen between the law being passed by Parliament. It's been passed by Parliament now. When the PNM won the election on the 7th of September last year, there were some amendments that they had, and those amendments have been passed by the Parliament. So the law as it stands is exactly what the PNM wants.
Right.
And we now need to get down to the detailed work of going from there to getting it implemented. And it's no small piece of work.
But do you think any politician really wants to do this? If two sides of the same coin, UNC, PNM, they may all stand to benefit. They may have their finances here, finances there. How do we truly find independent people to look over this and make sure that everything is above board?
Well, it's a real question. How does anybody who's a politician and a self-interested creature abolish themselves? Right. That's a really interesting question. But abolition has happened in the past. I mean, as people of African descent, we would know that. So people many of whom owned slaves, voted to abolish slavery at a particular moment, and therefore the campaign from outside of those chambers has to continue with its strength to make the point that our national interest is at stake, our country's collective wealth is at stake, and most importantly, something we don't speak about much, the fundamental order and stability of the society. If we have a situation where the biggest contracts that are given out and the biggest arrangements that are made in secret, they are made in smoke-filled rooms, they are made in questionable circumstances. Well, I don't want to get into the golf thing, you could say that. but it's made in that kind of circumstances, where in fact there's a question mark hanging over it. You then have a situation where it stops being a question of merit. Your proposal was better than mine.
Right.
It stops being who you know, that you know somebody and I don't know them. It becomes who knows you. So somebody says, right, well, in fact, we like Kejan, he's one of us, and we're going to give him a project and so on. And that kind of thing is detrimental to development. It impedes young people, young professionals who are coming into the workplace, young professionals who are starting firms, who are looking at this program and so on. They actually have to wonder, well, what is the point of all of this? Because basically, I'm young, I don't know anybody.
Right.
And it discourages the kind of initiative you need
without engaging in some sort of illegal activity as well.
So there's a whole series of consequences, hard and soft consequences. Hard consequences, things cost a lot more than they should.
Right.
Which we hear about with virtually every state project. They cost a lot. Very seldom do you hear a project that came in on budget.
On time.
And came in on time. Very seldom. Most times it doesn't matter who's in government, whether it's this government or that party or this party.
There's a reason for that. It works in their
part of the same thing. So there are real costs to the country, and the country needs to engage in a relentless campaign. This law must now be implemented, and therefore, if I could use the platform of TV6, the morning program, therefore we need to say to the politicians, to Dr. Rowley and his colleagues, that in fact what we need to hear from you next, and I know the budget is next week Friday and the 30th of September, what we need to hear from you next in some kind of particularity is the details of when is this going to happen, because the stage of Parliament approving the PNM amendments was roughly 6 months ago.
Right.
That was in, I think it was in May, April or May.
So
what's happened for the last 6 months? What are we doing? And we need to hear.
Do you think now is the time to really get down and do this, seeing that there are no major projects happening right now? The country's in a bad way financially, so we're not getting into these mega projects as we would have seen in the last administration. It's now the time.
Absolutely. This is the time.
This?
And I mean, if you go back through our history, these sorts of changes have happened at moments of need,
right,
so to speak, in that things that people had spoken about for a long time and couldn't get done happened at moments of need. The point I want to make to you, Kejan, about the implementation of the procurement law is that the law I referred to earlier on when I was speaking about Invaders Bay was the Central Tenders Board Act.
Right.
And the Central Tenders Board Act was put in place by the first government the country had in its pre-independence, coming up to pre-independence, was Eric Williams' government. And it's the Central Tenders Board Act 1961. What a lot of people don't know is that in between that act becoming a law and it becoming implemented as an agency with actual members of the central board selected and sworn into office with a staff, with the correct forms, with the typewriters, with the telephones, with their own building, it was 5 years. So in fact, the first Central Tenders Board, the literal board of the first people were actually sworn in 1966.
Right.
It took 5 years. So
do we have 5 years to wait?
So listeners and viewers need to understand that it took 5 years. And that was an Eric Williams who was immensely popular. He was somebody who had a tremendous amount of national and regional stature, and it took him 5 years to do it. So we need to be mindful of our history and understand, for us to get this thing, it's already been 6 months the law has been passed. We need to stand up and insist on it.
So we have 4.5 years?
No, I think we need to get it done in the next, within the next 6 months it needs to happen.
So that's
my opinion.
You're giving them a deadline?
I would like to see that, yeah.
So we're talking budget again.
Sure.
You've also raised issues of paying contractors, because there's still all of these people who still have to be paid.
Yes.
So forget awarding new contracts. What about the old ones? What situation do you think they're going to be in come September 30th?
Well, it's difficult. It's difficult to really mediate that kind of situation, because what you're looking at is a scenario where people will be owed money. So a contractor may be owed money in 3 contracts and get offered new contracts. And one of the phenomena we have happening is that some of the agencies,
new contracts from the government.
Yes, some of the agencies that owe money on previous work continue to issue fresh contracts.
Right.
And you may say to yourself, or listeners may say, but that's not fair. How could that be? But it takes 2 hands to clap. There are contractors who will be owed money, who will take fresh contracts. So in fact, 2 people have to be willing to dance. So there's a sort of a degree to which they want to do this thing, and it's having a terrible effect commercially, because the contracting industry has a lot of linkages in the economy to transportation,
of course,
to the banking and insurance sector, to hardware companies, a whole lot of linkages in the economy, and those people are all being seriously affected. It's had a serious effect on the national economy, and in particular the contracting and construction.
Yeah,
parts of the engineering and so on. Yeah.
Engineers as well. I know several people, engineers are losing their jobs.
Absolutely.
Spend all this money to go to UE or go abroad and come back home. And,
quite true.
And so how does that problem get fixed? If you continue to exacerbate the problem by, things need to be built.
Yes.
Contracts need to be awarded. So then how do you mitigate that? How do you straddle? How have other countries straddled this balance? I'm sure we're not the first people to be in this situation.
Well, one of the things that's happened in other jurisdictions, more advanced jurisdictions, is that there are laws that make it illegal for you to go on getting work without getting paid. So in fact, you have a right to insist on the state paying you, and you have a right to insist, for instance, on foreign contractors not being able to leave the country without paying their local subcontractors.
So you don't get that OAS situation.
Yeah, but in fact, we also need to look frankly at the legal scenario, because of course legal action is always an option. But the difficulty is that an individual contractor or consultant taking a legal action against the state, you expose yourself to 2 dangers. Danger number 1 is that you might win.
Right.
Because no legal action is certain. And danger number 2, which is more certain than danger number 1, is that if you are suing the state, when you are filling out the documents for pre-qualification, you have to list what litigation you're involved in. So in fact, you will be listing that I am suing Tech, I am suing HTC or whoever,
Right.
and the person looking at that, if they have 20 applicants for jobs, they could put you at the bottom of the pile because this person likes too much court.
Right.
So you could find yourself getting bad marks in a pre-qualification assessment because of your standing up for your rights.
And so I would tell people to...
Yeah, to avoid that person.
Yeah.
But that is the reason that as an industry, the industry needs to stand up, whether it is through the Contractors Association or the JCC or the engineers or whichever of the particular groups. The industry, the proposal I have made is that the industry needs to stand up and consider class action lawsuit or some sort of a lawsuit that in fact compiles everybody's claims together under particular classes and makes those claims collectively so that no one person is inflicted with all of those consequences. The cost can be shared and probably you get a better result.
But does everyone get their money at the end? At the end,
it's
or
possible.
You get a fraction of what you could have got.
It's possible. I believe it's got a good prospect of success.
When you look at situations like the Maracas Bay project where Calco was fired and now taken to court and everything just stalled there. Is that the best way in terms of you got a contract, you didn't like how the contract was awarded by the previous administration? Should you have cancelled that contract knowing the ramifications and where it puts us now? And is that
the Calco case, as far as I know, you're saying that the state cancel the contract.
Fire
the contractor, and there's some litigation arising. I don't want to speculate on that one. I'm not fully familiar with those facts. Right. And more to the point, it's under litigation, so we don't know what the result will be.
When you have the state getting rid of a contract, maybe for purely political reasons, how much does that cost us in the long run?
If the contractor wins, it could be expensive because they would have a claim for loss of profit and those sorts of things. If the contractor wins, it will be expensive. But very often, you would find that these cases, they're announced in a blast of sound and fury. But very often you find these cases, they are settled. So you very seldom hear about judgments. Very, very seldom. So, for example, there's huge litigations running at the moment against the state. And very often people sit together and they talk, and there's a combination of some money for this and some new jobs over here.
Right.
And people work things out and withdraw the litigation.
Is that the better way to do it?
Well, it's always better. It's always better to jaw than to war, to talk it through and find a solution. But sometimes bringing a lawsuit is the only way to get the attention of officials,
So we're looking at... So we're talking contracts, and to bring it back to the Derek Chin project,
yes.
Do you think there's any way that this could get off the ground? Do you think there's any way that would you have to go all over, start the process again, maybe do it the right way?
Yeah, I think it needs to be restarted because one of the things that keeps reappearing is the claims by Mr. Chin that he had a project that was good and the project was ready to go, and he found himself delayed. Okay, and it's frustrating for him when he expresses that in the media and so on. And I think we need to really get back to the facts. And the facts are, I don't want to comment on the viability of Chin's scheme. That's his role.
Right.
But the facts of the matter are that what took place at Invaders Bay was improper. A request for proposals was put out. Design, finance, build various projects down there. And the rules for evaluating those tenders were only published a month after the closing date.
Right.
I want to say that again. The rules were published a month after the closing date. Dr. Tiwari told the Parliament so on the 28th of February 2012. So in fact, just that alone lets you know we're talking about a process that's highly improper. And in fact, there's a phrase in law when you're talking about contracts called voidable, in that in fact you could touch a button and destroy the whole thing.
Right.
So the notion that there's something sound and that there's something proper that has been frustrated, that notion is a non-starter. With all respect, that's a non-starter. That's not true.
If you can't prove that it wasn't done,
done the right way. So in fact, we need to start over. And as I said in my earlier remarks, we need to have consultation so we can discuss what is happening with the land at Invaders Bay. We've had extensive consultation on proposals for King's Wharf in San Fernando. During the same period Invaders Bay was taking place.
That's being done the right way in your opinion?
Yeah, there's this extensive consultation. And what took place at Invaders Bay up to now, apart from leaks, we don't actually know what is the Invaders Bay Marina Development Project. That's the Jerry Joseph one. Okay. We don't actually know in detail and as a proper presentation and a consultation, what is the proposal that was the Streets of the World with Mr. Derek Chin. And recently on the 8th of April, Minister of Finance Imbut spoke to the Parliament and he gave us a mid-year budget review. And during that mid-year budget review, Minister Imbut told us about information about an extensive project, huger than the other two, in which he spoke about an international financial center, a five-star hotel, a conference center, and so on and so on. And again, the details of that, apart from Minister Imbut's statement, the details of that are also unclear. So I'm saying that we need to get the details of what's being proposed, put on the table. We need to invite the views of the public and then put the thing on the correct footing.
Afra Raymond, thanks very much for your time. This is a topic that you're very passionate about. So thanks for taking the time this morning to talk to us. We're going to take a break and be right back. This is Morning Edition.